Person-centered theory applied to major depressive disorder. This is a group project by Jared, Germain, and Roman for the Counseling 5307 class with Dr. Greene-Rooks. Person-centered theory applied to major depressive disorder. This project will explore the application of person-centered theory to treating the presenting concerns of depression. We'll discuss the history of the theory, define major depressive disorder, and explain cultural considerations of the topic, and show practical application of the theory for treating depression. Carl Rogers and the history of person-centered theory. Rogers described his early college attendance of Columbia University as a time when his outlook on life shifted from away from parental and home influences and became more broad into social influences. In pursuit of his doctorate in clinical psychology, he became involved in the testing and measurement movement while in school. Later, at the Institute for Child Guidance, Rogers took further influences from the psychoanalytic approaches of Freud and the Adlerian theory. Based on his dissertation, Rogers' Personal Adjustment Inventory was published by YMCA Press and sold 500,000 copies in over 50 years. He married and had 2 children, to include his daughter, Natalie Rogers, who had in her later adulthood become a notable contributor to humanistic psychology, adapting her father's work to found the person-centered expressive arts. In his post-graduation career, Rogers served as director of the New Rochester Guidance Center and also the Child Study Department of the Rochester Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children. It was while he was working in leadership positions here that he worked on his cases, which would later come to inform his person-centered theory. Rogers says that he attributed much of the formation of the basis of his theory on 3 particular cases. While working with a child with pyromania, Rogers followed the contemporary methods of treatment for the time and used leading questions to help the child see that his pyromania was a result of sexual impulse. The child was released on probation, but continued to set fires post-treatment. While working with another child, Rogers witnessed hypnotherapy used to treat bedwetting behavior. However, through the hypnotic treatments, it became evident that the child could become resistant to hypnotism and no longer entered the necessary trance state to perform the treatment, rendering the treatment itself unsuccessful. Thirdly, in working with another child, Rogers made the observation that the mother's rejection of this child is what was causing the child's issues. He began working with the mother as well, including her, but her continued resistance impeded progress with the child. Once again, the treatment ended unsuccessfully. So it appeared to Rogers that the human can resist a skillful therapist's interventions that tried to direct the client's behavior. Therefore, he reached the conclusion that the key to successful treatment was the client choosing to change themselves. Without the child choosing to make a change in their behavior, it just wasn't going to happen from Carl Rogers' perspective of these cases. So we'll get a little deeper here into the specifics of what exactly this theory and therapy is. Growing and positive change wasn't going to happen without the client themselves buying into it or even leading in the way of their treatment. Rogers' hypothesis of growth and positive change was summarized in his publication of Non-Directive Counseling in 1942. Quoting Carl Rogers in his own words, "This hypothesis that the client has within themselves the capacity, latent if not evident, to understand those aspects of life and himself which are causing him pain." He went on to say, "The function of the therapist is to create psychological atmosphere as will permit this capacity for this strength to become effective rather than latent or potential. In other words, unlocking the client's potential within themselves to find their solutions, to find what works best for them. As Rogers' theory evolved, he named his approach client-centered therapy, publishing a book by the same name in 1951. Here, he further defined his non-directive process, which honored the client's ability to lead in their own therapy. Client-centered therapy became known as person-centered therapy, with Rogers' publication of Becoming a Person in 1961 and Freedom to Learn, a view of what education might become in 1969. Through this evolution, Rogers progressed with his theory to what is known as client-centered therapy and Rogerian theory. This therapy focuses on positive regard towards the client with sustained empathetic understanding for the client. In the process, congruence is sought after with the goal of unleashing the natural occurring ability for the client to grow. Person-centered therapy continues to be defined as its own therapeutic method, and its principles are integrated into other therapy techniques such as motivational interviewing, where regard of the client's ability to self-analyze and set goals is paramount. Specifically, person-centered therapies rely on the practitioner utilizing several listening and affirming skills as the client and professional work together towards the client's self-defined goals. These skills and techniques include open-ended questioning, offering non-judgmental affirmation of what the client is describing about themselves, along with summarizing and reflecting key points of what the client is sharing. Ultimately, person-centered therapies and techniques aim to help the client by trusting their innate ability to reason towards their own positive ends. Some of these techniques can be demonstrated later on in our presentation.
Major depressive disorder, persistent depressive disorder, and other specified depression disorders are serious mood disorders that include suffering a depressed mood, a lack of interest in hobbies and activities, and symptoms such as disturbed appetite. These disorders are often multifactorial, stemming from genetics to environmental factors, which are including but not limited to abuse and death of a loved one. MDD was chosen because it is commonplace and we wanted to explore how client-directed therapy responds to the self-destructive thoughts commonly seen in major depressive disorder. We wanted to investigate how it would respond to person-centered interventions.
Alright, y'all, let's get started with the culture considerations. Now, the theme for the relationship between culture and the use of person-centered theory is just uniqueness, individual uniqueness to be more specific, as each individual has gone through their own unique experiences in regards to their own culture, whether they share a culture with someone else or not. And this is shown as the use of person-centered theory has been widely used in many cultures, but it doesn't guarantee that it's appropriate to use for any culture, as each culture and the experiences of one goes through in their own culture can vary, can be very different. It's very important as each individual is unique and again, not all experiences are shared. Now with that, research has explored the relationship between the use of person-centered theory and trauma, not just from a cultural perspective, but a neurophysiological one as well. Hard word to pronounce. Anyways, I find this extremely interesting considering that exploring the neurophysiological perspective is there evidence on how everyone's experiences can be different. You know, as in the nature versus nurture debate comes into play. And again, as in that everybody has a different experience. Now, the appliance of the theory can be limited in both Western and non-Western cultures, which is big because in most Western cultures, it's a lot of individualism, while non-Western cultures, a lot of them, not all of them, of course, tend to be very collectivistic. But applying this theory can be limited for both, as both cultures do carry different conceptions of the self and self-actualization. Instead of relying on how the cultures operate as a whole, one can apply the theory to individual cultural contexts that promote the independent self instead, which further proves everybody's uniquenesses in their own experiences and how they perceive the appliance of the theory and everything else in their life. Now, to conclude this part, culture and its variables are necessary, and it's going to affect the relationship between counselor and client. However, I do think it requires more research, as I feel like it needs to dig a little deeper and emphasize other factors that can affect how culture is viewed as a whole and through the lens of person-centered theory. And this could include factors such as gender roles, views on mental health, health in general. But I just feel like they need to explore some of those factors a little bit more, because with the research, it just explores culture as itself and just, you know, you, the person. It doesn't explore like other factors that could tie into that as well. Now, moving on to age considerations. It's pretty similar to culture considerations because when exploring age considerations, it's shown more exploration towards the younger populations, such as exploring the interpersonal approaches and points of view when working with adolescents, assessing individual differences in temperament in children aged 3 to 6, and assessing instrumental and reactive aggression in clients in middle childhood, respectively. Now, when working with these age groups, there is a lot of extensive use of the three basic conditions of person-centered theory, which are genuineness, unconditional positive regard, and of course empathy. But like with cultural considerations, age considerations towards person-centered theory needs to be explored a little more, as there is research on younger populations as evident here, and their relationship with person-centered theory in regards to depressive disorders, but not so much with the older populations. Although the results are promising, as there is research within their levels of self-esteem, and there is research as to how similar depressive disorders are between the youth, adults, and the elderly, providing the foundation to build on when exploring older populations and their relationships to depressive disorders and the person-centered theory.
Eeyore, a middle-aged male donkey who resides alone in a stick house in the 100-acre woods, was recently referred for person-centered therapy. Eeyore's diagnosis is major depressive disorder, mild, single episode. At intake, Eeyore reported low energy, sadness for most of the day stemming from feelings of not being noticed and insecurity about his tail. He reports depressed moods for most of the day, markedly diminished interest in almost all activities, psychomotor retardation, fatigue, and feelings of worthlessness. He meets 4 symptoms of criteria A, and all criterias B, C, D, and E of major depressive disorder. Here is video of his therapy session through Zoom, where motivational interviewing application of PCT techniques are displayed, primarily the reflection techniques. It's good to see you, Eeyore. Where would you like to start today? What would you like to talk about?
Well, we've been talking about how therapy doesn't have to only be about problems, but that we can share positive things too. Something good happened to me this week, and that's such a rare occurrence. I thought I should share it.
I'm eager to hear what's on your mind.
You know, I had a birthday party, and it was fun. I felt like there's a lot of friends there that were there for me. People noticed me.
Can you tell me more about that? How you felt to be noticed?
Thankful. I told them I was thankful, even though they probably didn't really want to be there. I was glad that they came.
You're saying they probably didn't want to be there. Simple reflection. Stick close to what the client said, communicate what you're hearing, and let the client hear their own words. Can you tell me more about that? What you mean?
Well, people celebrate birthday parties just because it's the right thing to do. Social expectation is you wish someone a happy birthday on their birthday. They probably only said it to me because they didn't want to be forgotten on their own birthday.
I hear you saying they only told you happy birthday because that was the expectation, not because of any genuine care about you? Amplified reflection. This intentionally overstates the client's message and prompts them to critically reflect on what they said.
Well, I wouldn't say they don't care. They made me a cake. They fixed up my stick house to look nice. I mean, that must have taken some time.
It sounds like you can name some times people have shown genuine caring behavior. Complex reflections. They add meaning and focus to what the client said to get to the deeper issue. It aims to hopefully prompt change talk.
The world is such a gloomy place, after all. But then I have a good day, and it makes, I don't know, it's like the good times make it seem like it's too good to be real. Like good days are just too good to be true. It's too good to be true that people could actually care about me like that on my birthday.
Do you find it hard to believe that people would actually care about other people?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. There are caring people in the world. Rabbit cared enough to pull Pooh's head out of that honeypot that time. And there was the time I lost my tail, and everyone in town helped me find a replacement. I didn't much like the choices that they made, but they were thoughtful to find something for me.
It sounds like you can name some times people have shown genuine caring behavior.
Yeah, I guess so. The world isn't always gloomy. I remember it felt good to care for that flower I was growing. I guess even if there's a lot to be sad about, all the times my friends ruined my stick house, for instance, there's also good things, like when they worked together to build me a new one. In a way, maybe those gloomy times are what make the not so gloomy times so special.
I'm hearing some positive things in addition to the negative.
Yeah, I guess there's a good amount of both. There's bad, for sure, but there's good things in life too.
It's good to see you